Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, when we walk through a modern city, our eyes are naturally drawn upward.
Hmm.
We see the skyscrapers, the suspension bridges, these massive feats of engineering that seem to just, defy gravity. We look at them and think, wow, the steel and concrete, it must be immense.
It is. But I think today we're arguing that the steel isn't actually the most important structure holding those buildings up.
Exactly. Today we're looking at the invisible structure, the contract.
The contracts.
Specifically, we are diving into the FIDIC 2017 Conditions of Contract for Construction, and even more specifically, we are zooming in on Clause 4, the contractor.
Right. Because if engineering is the skeleton of a project, then the contract is the nervous system. I mean, it tells the hands what to do, it regulates the schedule, and crucially, it decides who feels the pain when something goes wrong.
And look, to you listening, I know what you might be thinking. A legal text, really. But stick with us. We have a stack of documents here that basically define the rules of the game for these huge international projects. Our mission today is to decode this for you. If you want to understand how a billion-dollar project is governed without reading, 100 pages of dense text, this is the deep dive for you.
We're going to look at the burden of responsibility. Clause 4 is, well, it's the backbone of execution. It defines what the contractor has to do, what risks they have to swallow, and maybe most importantly, what they have to pay for if they mess up.
So let's unpack this. Let's start with what I'm calling the broad shoulders of the contractor. Clause 4.1. This really sets the stage. It just says, the contractor shall execute the works in accordance with the contract. It feels almost too simple, doesn't it? Just build the thing you said you'd build.
It sounds simple, but in the legal world, brevity, well, it often hides a lot of liability. Clause 4.1 is very specific. It says the contractor provides everything: personnel, goods, consumables, temporary works. If you need it, it's on you to bring it.
Okay.
But there's a critical distinction here that we need to make right away, and that's the difference between construction and design.
Right, because usually under this specific contract, the Red Book, the contractor is just building what they're told. They get a drawing, they pour the concrete.
Generally, yes. The clause states the contractor is not responsible for the design unless the contract specifically says so. However, and this is a huge however, modern projects are complex. They often have pieces where the contractor does have to design something, maybe a specific fire suppression system or a specialized part of the plant.
And that's where the legal standard, it just completely changes. Right?
Oh, it changes drastically.
Yep.
If a contractor designs any part of the works, Clause 4.1 says that part must be fit for such purpose.
Fit for such purpose. Now, that sounds pretty reasonable to a layperson. Why does that phrase make lawyers sweat?
Because fit for purpose is, it's the highest obligation you can have. It is an absolute guarantee. It's not enough to say, I tried my best, or I use standard industry practices.
Yeah.
If the thing doesn't work for its intended use, you are in breach of contract, period.
So if I design a ventilation system, and I use the best engineers and the best software, but it still fails to cool the building efficiently, I'm on the hook.
You're on the hook. You can't argue that you weren't negligent. The result failed, so you failed. It's why contractors fight so hard to avoid design responsibility in these contracts.
And they can't just sketch these designs on a napkin and start building, can they? There's a bureaucratic loop here called the review.
Yes, the administrative bottleneck.
Yeah.
So if the contractor designs something, they have to submit the documents to the engineer for review. And they cannot, the text is bold here, commence construction until they get a notice of no objection.
Okay, I have to stop you on that phrasing. A notice of no objection. That's distinctly different from an approval, isn't it?
It is a very, very deliberate choice of words. If the engineer approves something, they take some ownership of it. If they issue a notice of no objection, they are basically saying, I don't see anything wrong right now, but I'm not saying it's right. Go ahead at your own risk.
So it keeps all the liability firmly on the contractor.
Precisely. And the clock is always ticking. If the engineer just sits on the design for 21 days and says nothing, it's legally deemed to be a notice of no objection.
So the project doesn't just grind to a halt because someone is slow with their paperwork.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the work. But talk to me about skin in the game. Because Clause 4.2 talks about performance security. This isn't just a handshake promise that I'll do a good job.
No. This is cold, hard cash or a bank guarantee which is effectively the same thing to a business. Within 28 days of getting the letter of acceptance, the contractor has to deliver a performance security.
Okay.
Basically, they're buying a financial guarantee that says, if I run away or go bankrupt, the bank will pay the employer X amount of millions.
It's like a security deposit for an apartment, but, multiplied by a few $1,000,000 and backed by an international bank.
That's it. And the employer holds on to it tightly. They don't give it back until the very, very end. Clause 4.2.3 says they return it within 21 days after the performance certificate is issued.
And that means the job is done, the defects period is over, the site is cleared, everything.
Everything. You are tied to the project financially for years after the concrete is dry.
But this is where it gets really interesting for me. I saw this mathematical nuance in Clause 4.2.1 about a 20% rule. It feels like an inflation adjustment or something. What is that about?
This is fascinating. I mean, it really reflects the reality of these projects. They rarely finish at the price they started at. Clause 4.2.1 says that if the accumulated change in the contract price shifts by more than 20% up or down, the amount of that performance security has to be adjusted to match.
So if I win a contract for $100 million and the employer keeps adding changes so it becomes, say, a $125 million job,
you have breached the 20% threshold. You have to go back to your bank, pay more fees, and increase the value of the guarantee. You have to put more skin in the game because the game just got bigger.
But it works the other way, too.
Yes. If the project shrinks, maybe they cut a whole wing of the building, you can reduce the security. It keeps the financial leverage proportional.
It's a self-correcting contract. I like that. Now let's move on to a section I call the omniscient contractor. Reading clauses 4.9 and 4.11, I just got the sense that the contractor is expected to be psychic.
Psychic, or at least incredibly diligent. This is about risk allocation with data. Clause 4.9, use of site data, says the contractor is responsible for interpreting all the data provided. But more than that, it says the contractor is deemed to have obtained all necessary information.
Deemed to have obtained, that's legal speak for we assume you know it, whether you actually do or not.
Correct. The contract assumes you've inspected the site, the surroundings, the laws, the labor practices, and, this is crucial, the hydrological and climatic conditions.
The weather. So you can't say, well, I didn't know it rained so much here, I need more time.
Exactly. You're a professional. You are deemed to know the weather patterns. And this connects directly to Clause 4.11, the sufficiency of the accepted contract amount. Because you're deemed to know everything, the price you signed up for is deemed to cover everything.
Wow.
You can't come back later and say, oh, I didn't realize the access road was so steep, I need more money for fuel. The contract just says, you should have checked.
That feels like a trap. It feels like the employer is saying, here's the site, good luck, don't ask for a penny more.
Well, it's a risk allocation mechanism. The employer wants price certainty. But there is a very specific trap and a potential escape hatch in Clause 4.7 about setting out.
Right, setting out. This is about physically positioning the building on the earth. X marks the spot.
Yes. The engineer gives the contractor original points of reference. Start here at this elevation, these coordinates. The contractor then have to set out the works from that. But Clause 4.7 says the contractor must verify the accuracy of those points.
Wait a minute. So if the engineer gives me the wrong coordinates and I build the bridge in the wrong place, it's my fault.
Potentially, yes. If you find an error, you notify the engineer. But if you execute based on an error, you're responsible for fixing it unless, and this is the big unless, you can prove that an experienced contractor would not have discovered the error.
Here we go. The experienced contractor. I picture this hypothetical person in a cape. The super contractor who sees all.
It's a legal standard, and it is the cause of so many disputes. The question is, would an experienced contractor, exercising due care, have found this error when examining the sites and the drawings?
And if the answer is yes, it was obvious, then I'm paying for the fix, even though I got bad data.
Exactly, because you should have caught it. But if the answer is no, this was so buried no one would found it, then you might get paid for the correction.
So you're constantly being measured against a ghost, the ghost of the experienced contractor.
That's a perfect way to put it. You have to prove that even the ghost would have missed it.
Now, let's talk about when reality bites back. We talked about how the contractor is supposed to know everything. But sometimes, the Earth does something crazy. Clause 4.12, unforeseeable physical conditions.
This is the battleground clause. This is the exception to the rule we just talked about. If the contractor encounters physical conditions, which they consider unforeseeable, they can claim for extra time and cost.
we should define physical conditions. We're not talking about a market crash or something.
No, we're talking about natural physical conditions or physical obstructions. Yeah. Maybe you dig and find a layer of granite where the report said it was soft clay. Or you find an old concrete foundation from a building that wasn't on any map.
And I want to be really clear on this because the text was explicit. This excludes the weather, right?
Correct. Clause 4.12 explicitly excludes climatic conditions. If a hurricane hits, that is not an unforeseeable physical condition under this specific clause. That's weather.
Okay.
You might get time for that under a different clause, but you won't get money here. Clause 4.12 is for the ground beneath your feet.
Okay, so I'm digging. I hit a massive, unexpected rock. What do I do?
You freeze. Clause 4.1.1 says you must give notice as soon as practicable. This is vital. You have to give the engineer the chance to inspect it before you disturb it further.
So if I panic, blast the rock, clear the rubble, and then send a bill, I'm in trouble.
You're likely getting 0. The engineer has to verify the condition. If you deny them that evidence, your claim just dissolves. But here's where it gets really strategic, the netting off provision.
Oh, I loved this part. It felt so petty, but also so logical.
It's brutal logic. Clause 4.12.5. If the contractor claims extra money for bad ground conditions, say, the rock was harder in Zone A, the engineer can look at other parts of the site. They can ask, were there other areas that were actually better than expected?
Hey, you suffered over here in the swamp, but the soil over there in Zone B was super dry and easy to dig.
Exactly. And the engineer can deduct the savings from the easy part to offset the cost of the hard part. The contract tries to balance the scales.
That is wild. We'll pay you for the bad news, but we're taking a cut of the good news.
It prevents the contractor from just cherry picking. You can't claim the losses and pocket the wins.
So this brings us to the part of the job that isn't about rocks or concrete. It's about paper, the administrative machine. I felt tired just reading about all the reporting requirements.
It's massive. We think of construction as hard hats and cranes, but Clause 4 makes it clear that it's largely about management systems. Take health and safety, Clause 4.8.
It's not just be safe, is it? It's document your safety.
Precisely. Within 21 days of the start date, the contractor has to submit a specific health and safety manual, and they're responsible for all the fencing, lighting, guarding the site until handover.
And then there's Clause 4.9, the quality management system.
Yes. You can't just say, we do good work. You need a formal QM system submitted within 28 days. And Clause 4.9.1 says the contractor must carry out internal audits of their own system at least every 6 months.
They have to audit themselves.
And report the results to the engineer. Here is a list of where we failed our own standards.
That requires a lot of honesty, or maybe a lot of creativity.
It requires a very specific kind of paperwork creativity, yes. But the real heavyweight champion of paperwork is Clause 4.20, progress reports.
These are not just, dear engineer, we are doing fine.
Far from it. These are massive monthly data dumps, charts, diagrams, detailed descriptions of progress, photographs and videos showing the status of manufacture, off-site.
Wait, off-site? Why does the employer care about what's happening off-site?
Supply chain risk. Clause 4.20 requires details for the manufacture of main items of plant and materials. The employer wants to know name of the manufacturer, location, percentage progress, shipment dates.
So if you're waiting for custom steel beams from a factory in China, the employer wants to see a photo of that steel on the ship.
They want to know exactly where their project is. It's a surveillance regime, plus safety stats, environmental incidents, and comparisons of planned versus actual progress. If you fall behind, the report has to explain how you're catching up.
Okay, let's pivot to something a bit more cinematic. I call this the Indiana Jones Clause. Clause 4.23, archaeological and geological findings.
Always a favorite.
So, scenario. I'm digging a trench for a pipe, and I hit a chest of gold coins. Or a dinosaur bone. It's mine, right? Finders keepers.
Absolutely not. Clause 4.23 states clearly, all fossils, coins, articles of value or antiquity shall be placed under the care and authority of the employer.
That is heartbreaking.
The contractor's obligation is just to take reasonable precautions to prevent anyone from removing or damaging them. Basically, you stop work, you guard the treasure, and you notify the engineer.
And then I assume you claim for the delay because you had to stop digging.
Yes, if following those instructions causes delay or cost, you can claim it.
Oh.
But the gold, that belongs to the owner of the land.
Fair enough. Let's talk about logistics. Clause 4.16 and 4.17. We talked about getting materials to the site, but there's a sticky clause about getting equipment off the site.
Clause 4.17, contractor's equipment. This is a fascinating lock-in mechanism. It says that when equipment is brought onto the site, it is deemed to be exclusively intended for the execution of the works.
So if I bring my giant crane to Site A, I can't just decide next week, actually, Site B needs it more, and drive it away.
Not without the engineer's consent. You cannot remove major items of equipment
Why is the employer so possessive about my crane?
because they don't want you shuffling resources to a more profitable job somewhere else. They want to ensure that the resources they see on site, the resources they relied on when they hired you, stay on site to get the job done.
It's like checking your luggage at a hotel, but you're not allowed to check it out until the hotel manager agrees you're done with your vacation.
That's a good analogy. And this control extends to the environment, too. Clause 4.18 requires the contractor to take all necessary measures to protect the environment, limiting damage, nuisance, noise, pollution.
And surface discharges. I saw that. You can't just pump dirty water into the local river.
No. Emissions and surface discharges must not exceed the values in the specification or any applicable laws. It's a strict liability. If you pollute, you pay.
We've covered a massive amount of ground here. We've gone from the high-level obligation to build to the financial handcuffs of the performance security, the experienced contractor standard, and finally, the nitty-gritty of reports.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, when I read Clause 4 now, I feel the weight of it. The contractor isn't just a builder. They are part lawyer, part fortune teller, part security guard, and part bank.
That's the reality. Clause 4 is designed primarily as a risk transfer mechanism. The employer pays the money, that's their job, but the contractor takes the weight of the physical and bureaucratic reality. They are the ones dealing with the mud, the paperwork, the errors, the safety.
And if they miss a notice or cover up a rock too quickly, they just lose their right to be paid for the trouble.
Exactly. It favors the organized. It favors the diligent.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the 2017 FIDI Clause 4, we want to leave you with a thought. We talked a lot about the experienced contractor, this hypothetical person who should have foreseen all the risks.
The standard by which the real human contractor is judged.
Right. But consider the world we live in now. Technology is changing how we build every day, and climate change is making those climatic conditions we discussed less and less predictable. A 100-year storm now happens every 5 years.
That's true. The baseline is shifting.
So is it fair to hold contractors to a standard of what a hypothetical experienced person would foresee when the past is no longer a reliable guide to the future? Or is that experienced contractor clause just a convenient legal trap to ensure the house always wins?
It's a question worth asking the next time you look up at a skyscraper and wonder who took the risk to put it there.
Thanks for listening to the deep dive. We'll see you on the next one.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.